This is a news flash.
Hello, I'm Leonardo Puglisi with a special edition of 6 News, rolling coverage right now for an extraordinary event, a historic news event. Queen Elizabeth II has died overnight at the age of 96. We were hearing she was having health concerns at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Her family went up to visit her, and she died earlier this morning, Australian Standard Time. There's been a lot of reaction coming into this from right around the world, from all corners of the globe, from people who might not even be big fans of the monarchy. And one place where there has been a lot of reaction is the United States, which of course is not a British Commonwealth country. Want to bring in our US correspondent, Jackson Gosnell, who is with us. Jackson, we've had statements from quite a few former and also the current US president. First, can you just go through with me what Biden has said in his statement?
Yeah, Leo, obviously very tragic news regarding the Queen today. And it was news that was felt around the world, not only in Australia, but even here in the U.S., as you mentioned. And the president, as well as the First Lady, obviously Joe Biden and Dr. Biden, they put out a statement, a very lengthy statement that we received earlier today. And I'll give you a little bit of context. It talks about from the first day of her kind of assuming the role through now. She's remained committed, and Her Majesty was just 25 years old as she endured the enormous task of helming one of the world's greatest democracies, as the president here called it. It goes on to talk about how she worked with 15 prime ministers and countless foreign heads of state as she listened deeply and thought significantly, being responsible for all sorts of tasks. And so as they talk about in the statement, the president as well as the First Lady are deeply saddened by what has happened. They say that she defined an era, and in a world of constant change, she was the steadying presence and source of comfort for so many. And being supported by her beloved husband, they go on to say, of 73 years, for 73 years, Queen Elizabeth always led with grace. And so in closing here, the statement just talks about how her legacy will remain on and how the U.S. shares in devastation with the world to this news.
Now, what about Donald Trump? He also met the Queen when he was president. He had a few infamous exchanges. I think there's some images of their exchanges that have gone viral and continue to be shared. But he put out a statement along with former First Lady Melania Trump, didn't he?
Yes, the former president, Donald Trump, of course, releasing a statement just shortly after. We received this really before receiving many other statements. It was very quick to be put out, but it says that Melania and the former president are deeply saddened to learn the loss of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And they say, together with fellow Americans, they send their sincerest condolences to the royal family and people of the United Kingdom during a great time of sorrow and relief, or a time of great sorrow and relief, rather. And it goes on to talk about historical and remarkable accomplishments made by Her Majesty, and talks about how they cherished their time together, Melania and Donald, as they were with the Queen, and never forgetting the generous friendship she offered, great wisdom, and wonderful sense of humor. They say that she was a grand and beautiful lady, and no one was like her. They say they hope God, may God bless the Queen. May she reign forever in our hearts, and may God hold her and Prince Philip in abiding care. So again, even former presidents tuning in on this as well to give their reaction.
George W. Bush, Barack Obama also put out their own statements, which is also interesting. But in terms of, because I know recently, in more recent times, we had Meghan Markle, which obviously brought the monarchy into a bit of a spotlight in the United States, when she obviously married Prince Harry. So, as someone who is obviously, an American, Jackson yourself, is the monarchy like? Do people know much about it other than the Queen? Is it that big of a thing? Because obviously here in Australia, we're a Commonwealth country. The Queen is was, I should say, our head of state. So do people know or care much about the British royal family?
Not to sound harsh or anything, Leo, but people don't. I think there are an older generation here who deeply do care, and maybe that shifted away from a younger sense of people. But I know personally, just being in school within the last couple of years, it was never really talked about. That's their government. We have our own government, right? But obviously, still an enormous sense of mourning felt here because of how it impacts our friends in the rest of the world, right? And in these other places where this is such a big deal. And that's not to say that it's not here, but of course it's not as widely understood how everything works as someone like yourself would understand. I was at dinner earlier this evening because it is night here in the US, and or late evening, and I was talking to a family who had just come into the restaurant, and we were talking about this news, and they shared with me that, although they don't know much about how this works, they're feeling an enormous sense of loss too, just for our friends who feel this in a more more direct way than perhaps we do.
It's certainly just an incredible story, Jackson. In terms of the media over there in the United States, I was watching mostly just British coverage, as you can understand, when I was seeing the news break last night. I was, BBC, Sky News, but I also saw a few clips of when it was announced on American television. So that's CNN, Fox, Newsmax. Also, I know Fox, their presenter made a bit of a blunder. They initially said the Queen, the King, I should say, instead of the Queen, which was a bit odd. But is this because I know it's obviously the evening there? You would have had your kind of your nightly news bulletins.
Yeah.
Is that the headline story? The Queen's death?
It is. For us to not be as greatly impacted as I mentioned earlier, it certainly seems that way if you watch American TV. I was at home when the news broke, and every channel was a special report. And I vividly remember watching CBS's coverage, there at home when this news broke. And it was so quick to break, too. I mean, we learned about this, and within what seemed like seconds, all the networks were on the air with this news. And remained on the air for quite a while to go over all of this. And I'm just looking now, and obviously most of the nightly programs are over, but we have these cable news segments that air into the late evening. And I'm just flipping through, and I see Fox right now has up the Tucker Carlson show, and there's a graphic of her up, and they're discussing reaction. I'm looking at News Nation, where also they're projecting her photo. So this is big news here in America, even though it doesn't, as I mentioned, directly impact us as much as other places.
And Jackson, just finally, a bit off topic here, but also something that is happening this weekend in the United States that I think we should also touch on, that I reckon would be getting a lot more attention if it wasn't for the Queen dying. This Sunday marks the 21st anniversary of the 9/11 terrorist attacks in New York, Pennsylvania, and Washington. I imagine we're going to have a lot less restrictions on this with COVID rules easing. So do you imagine lots of people will be going out to memorial services for that?
I do. And quickly, before switching gears, I do want to mention
Go ahead.
that I just thought this was relevant. The president of the United States, Joe Biden, he was expected to hold a news conference today to talk about COVID vaccine. So this kind of does go into our segue here of the 9/11 talk. As you mentioned, restrictions are being lifted. But at any rate, the president was expected to deliver remarks at 3 p.m. today to talk about vaccines and coronavirus. Those remarks were canceled because of the news, presumably because of the news of the Queen passing. And so even affecting the president of the United States and his schedule, obviously. But speaking to your point about 9/11 and the, remembering that time, restrictions for the most part have been lifted here, minus some of the big cities. I say some because not all of them, but restrictions have been lifted for a long time. I can't recall, I might have seen someone wearing a mask in a doctor's office within the last year, but at the grocery store and everywhere else, you just don't see that anymore. So I think it will be very much a traditional return to, as it was probably last year, but a traditional return to remembering this terrible day for our country as we head into the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely, Jackson. It's going to be really interesting to see how this all unfolds, and I'm sure while the rest of us are covering the Queen, we might have you on the 9/11 anniversary this weekend, 6 News Sunday night. Jackson Gosnell, though, thank you very much. We will leave it there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Leo.
Jackson Gosnell there, our US correspondent here at 6 News. Well, you're watching 6 News live right now as we continue our special coverage following Queen Elizabeth II's death. An extraordinary day. The news breaking around 3:45 a.m. last night. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time. That's the afternoon. Local time in the United Kingdom. Of course, she died peacefully, according to Buckingham Palace, at Balmoral Castle, surrounded by relatives. We know many of them were coming up in the hours just before her death. Now, the news that there were grave health concerns regarding her came at about 9:30ish on what was it, Thursday night, which is our time. So that was Thursday morning theirs. But truly incredible, and of course, for most people alive today, she is the only monarch they have ever known, the only one ever, and that's saying something. 70 years on the throne. She obviously had her Platinum Jubilee this year, which is an extraordinary feat, 70 years. Of course, it is unheard of. She is, the longest serving British monarch ever, and it's hard to see someone who would outlast her, because, Prince Charles, or actually getting into a habit here, I should say, King Charles III, he's in his 70s. He's not going to be on the throne for 70 years. And then it goes down to William, and then I think George. So look, just an extraordinary moment. We're going to stay with this coverage. If you've got any questions, if you want anything answered, if you want anything covered, let us know in the live chat. We're going to be staying with you. We are going to take a quick break, though, I should say, and then we're going to bring in our political reporter, Roman McKinnon, for more details on this, because it is a huge story, and we're hearing more reaction just continuing to flood in from Australia. But yeah, please do stay with us. You're watching 6 News live as we remember Queen Elizabeth II. We will be back in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're with 6 News Live as we continue our coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, of course, Prince Charles becoming King Charles III. It's a bit weird for some to say king now. It's something, again, most people would not have experienced ever in their lifetime. 70 years on the throne, as we mentioned just before the break. We've got with us now live from Sydney, I think it is today, Roman McKinnon, our political reporter. And of course, we're having reaction flooding in right now from right across the political aisle, right across the country. Roman, great to chat. This news, of course, saw some pretty early morning statements from the Prime Minister and, of course, an address a bit later. What did he have to say?
Yeah, good morning, Leo. As you mentioned, Anthony Albanese addressed the country this morning at around 6:30 or so. There was a lot of early statements released because, you know, in that 4 hour window from when Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth III died, there were so many statements from political people. What he did say in that televised address to the nation was, "This is a loss we all feel deeply. Grief is the price we pay for love," which, you know, it's quite a big statement. He also it was quite a lengthy one as well. He said, "From the moment the young princess became queen, shouldering the mighty weight of the institution into which she was born, Her Majesty made dedication to duty and service above self the hallmark of her reign. She celebrated our good times. She stood with us in the bad, happy and glorious, but steadfast too. In particular, we recall the sympathy and personal kindness she extended to Australians affected by tragedy and disaster." And today marks the end of an era, the close of the second Elizabethan age. The time of mourning will pass, but the deep respect and warm regard in which Australians always held Her Majesty will never fade. May she rest in eternal peace. And just moments ago, Anthony Albanese wrote on that condolence book along with other politicians just before we went live, I'm pretty sure.
Mm-hmm. It's truly extraordinary, and we've also heard, because there have to be big changes. There's obviously a lot of protocols that come with this. Quite an extraordinary amount of protocols. We've also heard Parliament has been suspended now.
Yeah.
I think
that's right.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary move, isn't it? I hate to use the word, but it's unprecedented.
Exactly. Yeah, but so federal Parliament, which was due to return next week, will be suspended for at least 15 days, of course, from the death of Queen Elizabeth III. There'll be also a national memorial service at Parliament House, and there'll be a national day of mourning in Australia. Also, all flags will be lowered to half-mast, and there'll be a 96-gun salute at dust at Parliament House for the age of the Queen, 96.
It's again something just so incredible because, as we've mentioned, this is the only monarch most people know, the only British monarch most people have ever known, and she's gone, which is just an extraordinary thing to think about. And so we're also hearing this is going to have disruptions for some parliaments. I think I've heard Victorian MPs are going to actually have to be re-sworn in because they got to do allegiance to the king or whatever it is. And we've also heard statements, might I add, from the Victorian Premier, Daniel Andrews. Yep. He said, "We treasured her, the entire world respected her, may she rest in peace." And the Queensland Premier said, "Queen Elizabeth was loved and respected and represented all that was dignified and positive in the royal family." Roman, of course, as you can imagine, this has been dominating social media, as you'd expect. Twitter had a bit of a crash last night when the news broke. Is anything else being discussed is the big question. Are there any other topics people can focus on? Because I can't think of a single news item that is happening today. Not a single one other than this. And I don't think the 6 p.m. news bulletins will be showing anything different.
No, not not a lot of news today. I think it will be definitely dominated by this news. But tonight, the Brisbane Lions are playing Melbourne, so we'll see how that goes. And
That's a
yeah,
lighter note,
so
yeah.
yeah, that's trying to add that into it. But yeah, obviously, such a terrible day for the world in history. I also wanted to mention that she was queen for 70 years and 7 months. That's the longest of any monarch in Britain's history. So
By
she,
far, too. Like, it's a extremely high bar.
yeah, so she was obviously such an important figure, and I saw pictures before of Windsor Castle. Just flowers just flooded the gates, and at
Mm.
Buckingham Palace as well. So, just quickly, there were 16 Australian prime ministers to serve during Queen Elizabeth the second's time, or the third time. So that was um, Menzies, Holt, McEwen, Gorton, McMahon, Gough Whitlam, Fraser, Bob Hawke, Paul Keating, John Howard, Kevin Rudd twice, Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, Scott Morrison, and of course now current Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. So that's 16. That's just remarkable,
Yeah,
really.
16 prime ministers in Australia, all as Queen Elizabeth II reign, as her reign happened, which, as you know, it's quite an extraordinary feat. Roman, we'll keep coming back to you as we continue our coverage here, but we'll leave it there. Roman McKinnon, political reporter. Thanks.
Thanks, Leo.
Roman McKinnon there, 6 News political reporter. I just want to go back to the statement that we had from the Victorian Premier Daniel Andrews. I mentioned it briefly there with Roman, but I just want to get into it again. Now he says that on behalf of our government, every Victorian, we offer our deep condolences to His Majesty King Charles III, the royal family, and all those mourning the loss of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. Very few of us know a world without the Queen in it. Her presence spanned countries, cultures, language, and continents. Her reign transcended decades and generations. He goes on to say she rode a tram around the Hoddle Grid, talking about Melbourne there, watched Richmond win at the MCG, and caught a show at the Princess Theatre. She travelled across the state visiting many places, touching so much of what makes Victoria special. Her historic reign and long life has come to an end, but Victoria's deep affection and respect for Her Majesty lives on. May she rest in peace. That is Victorian Premier Dan Andrews. Also mentioned it there, the Queensland Premier, Anastasia Palaszczuk, says, "It is with great sadness that we learn the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She was loved and respected and represented all that was dignified and positive in the royal family. She was a constant reminder of the true meaning of service, integrity, and courage, and she was admired around the world, especially here in Queensland." Now, we also had a statement, might I add, from One Nation. One Nation has also said something about this. They've said the news. They've said she will be missed by millions. And she leaves behind a truly, a truly impressive legacy. That is One Nation there. Of course, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Let us know anything you have to say in the live chat, because this is, an extraordinary day. We're going to bring you some extraordinary coverage here as we continue to follow this story. But I guess we also have to remember that the Queen herself, she had been reportedly having health issues. I stress reportedly there, and we had been hearing about them for quite a while now. Someone said she had bruises on her hand when she was meeting with Liz Truss, the new UK Prime Minister. Others were saying things about her, walking funny. There were just constant rumours, mainly, might I add, since the death of Prince Philip in April last year, which was actually quite a while ago. So the Queen, some said, she wouldn't last much longer after her beloved husband died, well, she lasted well over a year, so that's saying something, isn't it? Look, I think definitely we're going to just continue to see this this story unfold, because it's just something that you don't report on again. I mean, you do, but not someone who's been, there for 70 years. 70 years, aged 96 herself. Just extraordinary. Again, leave your thoughts, leave your questions, leave your comments in the live chat. We'll be reading them out. Benedict says, with the death of Queen Elizabeth II, Lady Pamela Hicks, near Mountbatten, 93, is now the oldest living descendant of Queen Victoria, living in the UK. Here's a fun fact for you. Let's see. That's really interesting. I hadn't actually heard that. So there you go. Now, by the way, if you're wanting more tributes and obituaries on this, you can check out a special 6 News bulletin. You might have seen that notice in the corner. You can watch it on YouTube now for special coverage on this. It will air at 9 a.m. Eastern, but of course we're going to stay with you live, purely because of how big a story this is, and how, I'm going to have to go back to that word again, unprecedented it is. It is just something that has sent shockwaves around the world, both in countries where there obviously is still the Queen as head of state, and those where she is not. So that's saying something, isn't it? You heard from Jackson Gosnell earlier, our US correspondent, just how much people cared, really, and how much people had respect for her. So look, it's definitely a sad day for many people, and
April
and definitely
21,
one where we are going to
1926,
just continue to
Queen.
see this reaction pour in, because it's not something that that we will be reporting on again soon. Look, what we're going to do now, we're just going to, I think, if we can get it up for you, we're going to play some of the obituary from Connor Alforque that we had earlier. We're hoping to be able to play it if all goes well
in the arms of her mother and grandmother. These are Queen Elizabeth.
Let's have a listen to that obituary now. This is from our chief reporter Connor Alforque earlier today, because she had a long life. Let's have a listen to it, and please do let us know in the live chat if it doesn't work. But this is from Chief Reporter Connor Alforque taking a look at the Queen's life and legacy.
Seconds baby photos, smiling her way through childhood at ages 1 and 2. To her parents, the Duke and Duchess of York, she was Lilibet. To the world, she was a princess. No one realised she would one day become queen, and for the first decade of her life she lived without the pressure of being heir apparent. It was only that her uncle abdicated the crown to run away and marry an American divorcee that she moved up the line of succession. How history repeats. During her early years, the princess enrolled as a Girl Guide, studied art and music, and honed her interests in riding and swimming. But no one could deny that from a young age, Princess Elizabeth showed promise.
In wishing you all good evening, I feel that I am speaking to friends and companions.
A queen in the making at age 14, delivering this wartime broadcast with that characteristic calm.
My sister Margaret Rose and I feel so much for you, as we know from experience what it means to be away from those we love most of all.
Though she was not yet queen, her public duties ramped up, accompanying her parents on some official visits, and in 1945, to help with the war effort, joined the Auxiliary Territorial Service, where she trained alongside British women to become an expert diver and mechanic. 2 years later, an ostensibly quiet and reserved Elizabeth married her opposite.
You've not seen the world's most experienced pluck on there.
Distant cousin Prince Philip Mountbatten of Greece and Denmark. Within a year, an heir arrived. Son Charles was born on 1948, daughter Anne in 1950. In 1952, Elizabeth assumed the duties of Queen after the death of her father. Her mother, Queen Elizabeth, became Queen Mother, and she, Queen Elizabeth II. June of 1953, 27-year-old Princess Elizabeth was officially coronated, the ceremony televised for the first time.
Imagine, if you can, our young Queen's feelings, as with her husband beside her, she is slowly borne towards the hours-long ceremony of pomp, circumstance and dedication, consecrating her as Queen of all the nations and all the races over which she holds sovereignty.
Elizabeth went on to have 2 more children, sons Andrew and Edward, in the 1960s. In 1969, she officially made Charles her successor by granting him the title of Prince of Wales. Now poised to be king, Charles has big shoes to fill. Ever the respected and dutiful royal, the Queen's record is largely blemish-free and is credited with modernising the monarchy. In the best of times,
every year we herald the coming of Christmas,
and the worst of times,
a time of disruption in the life of our country, a disruption that has brought grief to some, financial difficulties to many, and enormous changes to the daily lives of us all.
The Queen cut through as a calm and reassuring voice, but beneath the composure and stoicism her role demanded,
We have seen throughout Britain and around the world an overwhelming expression of sadness at Diana's death.
the Queen gave us some glimpses of her personality. Horses and corgis held a special place in her heart. So too Australia, which she visited 16 times during her reign.
It has been a difficult year for
The
this
composure
country
and
in many ways.
She'd been the target of several assassination attempts, including one in Australia back in 1970, while travelling by train from Sydney to Orange. A log is believed to have been placed on the tracks, but the brakes were applied with just moments to spare. Queen Elizabeth II is the longest reigning monarch in British history.
Very nice to see you.
Thank you.
Determined, age didn't slow her down, undertaking hundreds of public engagements per year, but the signs started to show. The mother of four's done diplomacy with 14 UK Prime Ministers and 13 US Presidents, welcomed 8 grandchildren and 12 great-grandchildren, all the while leading 53 Commonwealth countries. She has ties to over 600 organisations and charities, recently farewelling her husband of 73 years.
To commit into the hands of God the soul of his servant Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh.
From start to finish, she lived and lived well. Connor Alforquet, 6 News.
Welcome back. You're still with us here on 6 News. That was Chief Reporter Connor Alforquet looking at the life and legacy of Queen Elizabeth II and a special obituary there. You're seeing some more footage of her life there, some more photos, some more recent, some more older ones. I think that's her in Australia, in fact. But it's extraordinary that we're still getting this, still kind of, wrapping our heads around this. It hasn't even been 12 hours. Greens leader Anna Bant says, "Rest in peace, Queen Elizabeth II. Our thoughts are with her family and all who loved her. Now Australia must move forward. We need a treaty with First Nations people, and we need to become a republic." That's Adam Bant, the Greens leader. Caused a bit of controversy on Twitter there, but that's what he had to say about Queen Elizabeth II's death. Look, we're going to show you shortly some more clips of what the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, said, and also some of what, hopefully we're hoping to bring you some of what Liz Truss, the new UK Prime Minister, who was essentially the last non-relative to meet with, last person to properly meet with the Queen, which is extraordinary. But yeah, the story's going to continue to unfold, and yeah, so I think what we're going to do is we're going to keep wrapping this up. We're going to keep bringing you the latest developments. Please send in your questions in the live chat because we want to keep hearing what you're saying. We want to hear your views. We want to hear your reaction. We want to hear your questions. There's a lot we don't know. I think a lot is going to have to be changed now that we have a king. From our currency is going to have to change. That doesn't mean our current currency becomes illegitimate. It's still legal tender, but we're going to have some new notes, new coins produced. That to what's happening with the Queen's birthday holiday, what's happening with Parliament, 15 days off, it's been suspended as this period of mourning unfolds, is what we're hearing here. But yeah, it's truly been an historic day. We're going to make sure we keep following this. But yeah, as Jackson actually mentioned at the top of the show when he was talking about how big the United States media has been covering this, we're hearing that Norah O'Donnell, who anchors the CBS Evening News there, huge nightly program, she's actually going all the way to London to anchor her show, which is quite an extraordinary feat, again showing how important this is for US viewers. And apologies if you're hearing background noise. That's just the newsroom being the newsroom. So yeah, look. Here we go. Another comment from Benedict here. The Premier of South Australia said a state proclamation ceremony acknowledging the ascension of the King will occur in the coming days. Further details will be released shortly. Yeah, we will keep you across that, and of course across any other developments because this is. Huge. We've also had a statement just in from the Victorian opposition. Liberal leader Matthew Guy and Peter Walsh, Nationals leader, have released a joint statement. They say Queen Elizabeth II was a rock of stability in an unstable world for an unprecedented 7 decades. Her reign as monarch and Australia's head of state since 1952 was an extraordinary achievement by an extraordinary person. The great affection Australians, in particular Victorians, felt towards Queen Elizabeth II was sincere and genuine. Her Majesty showed a deep affection and interest for the welfare of our state and for all Victorians, particularly during difficult times such as Ash Wednesday and Black Saturday. The Victorian opposition places on record our deep sadness at Her Majesty's passing. The Liberal and National parties also sent our sincerest sympathies to King Charles III and the royal family on the loss of their mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother. That's Liberal Victorian leader Matthew Guy and Liberal and Nationals Victorian leader Peter Walsh with the joint statement there. Okay, so look, we're going to stay on this because it is definitely something where we're going to have news continue to break, even though it's overnight for the UK right now. Stories are continuing to unfold, world reaction, and especially what this means for us in Australia. That is what a lot of people want to know. That is the information we're going to bring you here. So look, we're going to take a quick break, I stress a quick break, just as we kind of, some might say regroup, you could put it that way, but we're just going to take a short break as we continue our coverage here, as we remember and many celebrate the life of Queen Elizabeth II, many mourn her loss, the loss of her as well. Stay with us, we'll be back after a very short break. You are watching 6 News. Live right here as the world marks the passing of Queen Elizabeth II. I'm Leonardo Puglisi, back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching 6 News Live, I should say, as we continue our coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Lee here in the live chat here on YouTube asks, do you think we'll become a republic now that Lizzie has passed? I think we will. Look, it's hard to tell, obviously. She hasn't even been dead 12 hours. But certainly this could definitely bolster that push for a republic. You imagine a lot have been saying, wait for the Queen to die and then push for it, or then it will go through. She has now died after 70 years on the throne, so we will have to wait and see. And we've also heard even that statement from the Greens leader Adam Bandt. He was pushing for it again. Let me read what he said. Our thoughts with her family and those who loved her. Now Australia must move forward. We need treaty with First Nation people. We need to become a republic. That is the Greens leader Adam Bandt at 8:27 a.m. Eastern today. So already those pushes for a republic are there. Do you support a republic? Let us know in the live chat right now. Again, we've had statements from so many leaders right now. Anthony Albanese, of course, he released a statement not last night, earlier this morning, so overnight essentially, and he spoke today. I'm sure we'll hear from him a little later too, and we can also probably expect something from the Governor General, which I don't think would surprise anyone there if we hear something from him. It's also worth mentioning that with a king now happening, we're hearing that Victorian MPs will have to be re-sworn in to Parliament after the official proclamation of the King next week was actually scheduled as the final sitting week before that November election, which of course we're covering on our website right now. Victoria decides. The Prime Minister and the Governor-General will be travelling to London in the coming days to meet with King Charles and offer Australia's condolences to the royal family. Former Prime Minister Tony Abbott has also released a statement regarding the Queen's death. Here's what he had to say, quote, "My whole life," she said, "shall be dedicated to your service, and Her Majesty the Queen was entirely true to that pledge. We have lost an exemplar of duty, honour and faithfulness, but deep thanks for her life should mingle with numbness and sadness at this loss." He goes on to say, "It is so typical of this remarkable woman that she was discharging her duty until her last day on earth," referring to Liz Truss there. "I'm sure God has saved this Queen, and long live the King." That's Tony Abbott there, the former Prime Minister. We're going to try to bring up a live shot just in a moment. Hopefully, we're hoping of Buckingham Palace. I think we just need to work out some logistics there. See, this is the thing. We are not exactly a massive news outlet, as you might have heard. We are on a bit of a skeleton staff here. So any support is appreciated, by the way. Patreon.com/sixnewsau, just $4 a month. But we are going to stay with this because regardless, skeleton staff or not, whatever day it is, whatever time it is, this is a huge story and one that deserves this kind of coverage. So stay with us here. We're going to hopefully bring up a bit of what Liz Truss had to say. Now, Liz Truss, of course, is the new UK Prime Minister. She was sworn in just days ago, which is quite remarkable when you think about it. That she had only just come in. So yeah, look, that's incredible in itself. I think definitely we're going to hear more from her very soon. Obviously, a big thing for her to have to kind of, I guess you could say, step into the shoes of someone having to speak about this when she's only in the job a couple of days. Also, might I add that, because she was formerly a Liberal Democrat, not a Conservative, she was against the monarchy, so we're going to have to see there regarding any potential statements from her. Let's now just bring up some of what Liz Truss said. Let's hope this plays. The new UK Prime Minister. This is what some of Liz Truss had to say shortly after the Queen died this afternoon UK time. Let's just take a quick listen.
We are all devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death of Her Majesty the Queen is a huge shock to the nation and to the world. Queen Elizabeth II was the rock on which modern Britain was built. Our country has grown and flourished under her reign. Britain is the great country it is today because of her. She ascended the throne just after the Second World War. She championed the development of the Commonwealth from a small group of 7 countries to a family of 56 nations, spanning every continent of the world. We are now a modern, thriving, dynamic nation. Through thick and thin, Queen Elizabeth II provided us with the stability and the strength that we needed. She was the very spirit of Great Britain, and that spirit will endure.
That was Liz Truss there, UK Prime Minister, speaking about the death of Queen Elizabeth. We want to bring in, just in a moment, again, political reporter Roman McKinnon, so bear with us here as we work to bring him in. This is the delightful thing about live broadcasting. Bear with us. You're going to stand by just a moment. Let's bring in Roman McKinnon. Stay with us. Just give us 10 seconds here. You'll hear him in a moment. Any second now. Roman McKinnon, there we go, is back with us, our political reporter. Roman, we were touching on it earlier, but you got some more details on what's going to happen with coins and banknotes, which of course we're going to have some big changes to now.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because you don't normally think about it because, well, a lot of people haven't had to go through a change in banknotes because a queen or king has died. So, sorry, let me just... Yeah, so, just briefly, the Queen was the most photographed woman in the world. That's just extraordinary. Like, it's so hard to even comprehend, really. And so, yeah, King Charles III, King Charles III will be on the coins from 2023. So whether or not that comes down into Australia and the mint, could it be maybe mid-2023, you know, who knows?
It's a tough thing to have to do. Think about how many coins and notes are out there. I mean, yeah.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, in the whole process of going through and making them all and then having to disperse all the old ones and get rid of those and then...
well, I mean, look, in terms of that, that's more of stopping production of the old ones. They're not... we should absolutely stress here that if you, like I would say everyone in the entire country does, have a coin or a note with the Queen on it, you can still use it. You could still use it in years, I'm sure. Apparently you can still use 2-cent coins too. Although they're allowed to be not accepted, but they're also still recognised as legal tender. No ATM machine will take them, though. There's a fun fact that I think I'm like 50% sure I said accurately. Nevertheless, I'm sure the fact checkers at 6 News will get me for that. Roman...
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say there's been plans to reprint that $5 note because the very not famous, but it's
the most well-known one, easily.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it was only a couple of years ago that they got those new ones with added security features and all of that, and now they're going to have to make a new one with someone else on there. Who may that be? Well, we'll have to find out.
Absolutely. Sorry, by the way, if you can just hear sirens. That's outside. You gotta love the mic. If it didn't pick up, I look like a fool there. Roman, it's truly interesting to see these kind of, I guess some might say, less important elements here. But they're still important. This affects our currency. This affects our public holidays. This affects our footy, even with the Queen's birthday match.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's look, stay with us. Well, I was gonna say we'll let you go here, but keep following this. Roman McKinnon there, our political reporter, he's been with us a lot this morning, and yeah, I'm sure we'll either keep crossing back to him. Of course, you can check out some of his work, social media as well. Roman, thank you, man.
Thanks, Leo.
Roman McKinnon there, 6 News political reporter. Look, a big story continuing to unfold here as we learn more about the death of Queen Elizabeth II. It's really sad for many people. You've also got some people who aren't sad for their own reasons. And of course, we have a lot of people who have very mixed feelings on her. Like, you look at what's trending on Twitter right now. The Irish and Prince Andrew are up there. So, that gives you a bit of a perspective there. On the ABC News channel, we're just hearing that that Malcolm Turnbull has been tearing up on the ABC News channel. He said he got out the Queen's portrait last night and reflected on her service. That's Malcolm Turnbull there, the former Prime Minister. An interesting report, by the way, from Crikey's Cam Wilson. People are cashing in on Queen Elizabeth's death by listing, you won't believe it, thousands of NFTs for sale as prices and demand for royalty-themed artwork spike. So, Queen NFTs are already out. She's not even been dead 12 hours, not reported dead 12 hours. So, yeah, it's a really interesting thing there. Wonder if there'd be any more deaths where that kind of thing happens. Again, would love to hear your questions. Let us know in the live chat as you get them, because we want to do our best to answer them, because of course there is still much we do not know. As much as we'd like to bring you all the information, we don't have it yet. But it is something that is going to... We're probably actually going to get more developments on this soon, because from what we have heard, the Governor-General will be speaking tonight at, I think I heard 7 p.m. Eastern. Governor-General David Hurley. We will stream that live here on YouTube. We'll bring you coverage for that. But yeah, I imagine there'd be a lot to say here as he kind of reflects, because he's the Queen's representative in Australia. The Queen is our head of state. The Governor-General represents her. So look, I think we're gonna have to wait. I don't want to say eagerly, but yeah, eagerly to hear what he has to say, because it's going to be a bit of a unique perspective there. And we also heard again he will be travelling with the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese as they go to pay respect to the royal family and now King Charles III. So there you go. Look, I think that's about where we're going to wrap up our coverage for now, because we don't have any new developments now. But what we are going to wrap up with in just a few moments is God Save the Queen, or God Save the King. I mean, it depends on what you want to call it these days, given the developments that we've had. But yeah, it obviously was a song we all heard play when Prince Philip died in April 2021, and we also those images, and I think you've been seeing them on loop here, of the Queen at the funeral of her husband. And as I think I said before, many people said, they did not believe she would last much longer. She's lasted more than a year. So Queen Elizabeth II dead at the age of 96 after 70 years, a record 70 years on the throne. An extraordinary 70 years, might we add there, and one that I think is going to continue to send shockwaves, because no one. I mean, there were obviously expectations when we heard that there were concerns about her health, but realistically, no one was truly expecting that kind of news to break late last night, overnight, but it did. So that's what happened here, I guess. So for now, we're just approaching 11 a.m. Eastern Standard. Queen Elizabeth II, Her Majesty, 70 years on the throne, 96 years of age, has died in the UK, in Scotland, Balmoral Castle, overnight. For now, though, we're going to continue our coverage throughout the day, but we will wrap up this live stream. We'll be back for what Governor General David Hurley is likely to say. We will wrap it up there, though. So that is 6 News Live, up to the minute. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Leonardo Puglisi. Have a good rest of your day, and stick with us as we cover this historic event.
Devastated by the news that we have just heard from Balmoral. The death